No intro joke today. It was deported. Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get on the show. Should get on Mandate. Get on Dolph Lundgren back in studio. Good to see you, my friend.
Hey, thanks, Adam.
Cancer-free?
Yes, sir. NED.
That is great.
No evidence of disease, it's called.
Is that what that is?
Professionally, NED, yeah.
Can you walk us through that journey a little bit?
Yeah, it's been a long, crazy journey and very tough at times. I started 10 years ago. I was in Sweden doing a gumball race, you know, when you go...
A rally.
Yeah, rally, 3,000 miles in a week in a Ferrari. And, you know, I was feeling a little ill. I'd done some sparring and martial arts, and I thought maybe I got hit or something because I had blood in the urine. And they did a CAT scan, and they found the tumor on my kidney, left kidney. I had surgery back here. And then you got to do the tests every 3 months, every 6 months, then every year. And finally, after 5 years, they said it was gone, but it wasn't. It came back that same year. This is during COVID. I was in Sweden. Sweden, they kept everything open during COVID. You know, everybody was drinking.
Crazy maniacs.
All the crazy freaking Vikings, you know. Anyway, I love them. I was back there, and I found some more tumors, and it turned out, you know, it was back, and I had some more surgeries, ended up doing systemic therapy. Turned out I was misdiagnosed. I didn't know that, but I had the wrong therapy for like 2 years. Everything just got worse, and finally I was in London in 2021 doing Expendables 4 and Aquaman 2. I was doing 2 movies back to back and kind of losing weight, couldn't really eat that well, and this doctor in the UK, you know, I had like a man-to-man with him because it was serious. And the guy over here hadn't told me the truth. And basically he told me, I said, how long do you think I had left? He said, about 3 years or so. But I heard in his voice more like maybe 1 year. And then I got back here, and a friend of mine was playing in a golf tournament. And he was playing with a UCLA doctor. And that doctor recommended a Greek lady, Drakaki at UCLA, Dr. Drakaki, and she took a look at my tests and she said, "There's something else going on there. You've been misdiagnosed at the other hospital." And she found there was another mutation. They checked the actual genes, cancer cells, and there was a different mutation. And they gave me another oral medication that didn't have any side effects. And within like 2 months, it started shrinking. And over the whole year, everything shrunk by about 90%. And then they removed the tumors, the dead tumors, using they freeze them out with radiation. And that was in 2022. They took them out. 2023. And so since beginning of 2023, I have no cancer activity, and they took out all the tumors. I got really sick after it was all over. I got really weak, and it took me about a year to get back in shape again. So I can, square up against you in my next movie. But apart from that, it took me about a year to get back to where I am now. But no, look, it was hard. I drew up my will. I made all the decisions.
Really?
And yeah, I was I do therapy now called cancer survivorship therapy, and my therapist says is like, you know, everybody knows we're going to die, but you don't think about it every day. But once you've been confronted with your mortality, whether it's in the service, you're in Afghanistan being shot at, or you're have cancer and you think you're going to die, then you go through this PTSD situation where she says you've been down, touched the bottom of the pool, and when you come back up, you're a different person. But most people only swim on the surface, you know.
So it's been kind of a journey for you, because the last time we spoke, I think you were talking about some childhood trauma and some therapy, and I mean, if I'd seen, when I was sitting in the theaters watching Rocky IV in 1985 or whatever it was, I would not thought about you in that therapeutic setting. But and maybe it was stigmatized at some point. It's not anymore. How is it in Sweden in terms of the stigmatization of like therapy? Like here, we've evolved over the last 20, 30 years, and guys volunteer. Yeah, I go to therapy, or my therapist said, but maybe they wouldn't have said that 30 years ago. But I always look at Sweden as a little more progressive and a little more on the vanguard of things. But how are they there with that?
Well, first of all, I think in America, it's a big country. I mean, L.A., California has always been more progressive, and actors did therapy. Brando did therapy in the 50s, back during the when they did method acting and actor studio and that. So I think it's been around for a long time. It just hasn't been really recognized, especially for men. But Sweden, I think in America, it's more normal to do therapy than Sweden. I think Sweden, they're a little more Viking-ish. Just have another drink, just
right.
Go out and chop some wood or something.
Yeah, which does help.
Yeah, a lot,
Yeah, and speaking of having another drink, Hard Cut Vodka is one of Dolph's latest endeavors. He's brought a bottle, which I'm happy about because I will try some later on tonight. American made. From Idaho, russet potatoes, and you can make vodka from lots of different things. Traditionally, it's potatoes, but
traditionally potatoes back in Russia, back in the old days, and then wheat. Most of them are wheat now, like Kettle One and Grey Goose, and their wheat. Tito's is corn. Potatoes is a little more complicated, and it's also a little more expensive, but it's a fuller mouth feel. It's more, it's creamier.
Really?
Yeah, you'll see when you drink.
I shall see. Is it is vodka the weapon of choice in Sweden? Like, I guess here it'd be whiskey, Jim Beam or whatever. If you went back, what is and Spain? Maybe they drink more wine. Germany, more beer, I guess. Like, what is Sweden's libation?
Well, look, it's called the vodka belt, right? It's Russia, Sweden, Scandinavia, northern England. If New York, Chicago up there, they drink more hard liquor. And Swedes drink vodka. They also drink aquavit.
What's aquavit?
Aquavit is it's also distilled spirit. From some of it is made from potatoes, but it has they add herbs to it, so it has like a kind of a distinctive taste. Vodka is, as you'll taste with hard cut, it's sort of tasteless, but it has like a creamy kind of neutrality to it. So you can easily mix it with other mixers, make martinis or whatever you want to do. Whereas aquavit, you kind of have to take it straight.
Because it's got other stuff.
It's got other stuff, herbs in it, yeah.
Are you, is your family in Sweden?
Yeah. My 2 brothers and 2 sisters in Sweden, yeah.
Are they okay with you and your success in your world? I mean, there's always some acrimony for some reason. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a jealousy or something. But not always.
No, they're fine. I think they're sort of still in shock after 35 years that I ended up in Hollywood because I was a chemical engineering student, and a karate fighter. I think they're excited. It's fun for them to read some gossip papers in Sweden, read about me, and sometimes I fill them in over the phone or whatever. But I think it's delightful for them, and they're not jealous or anything.
They're good. What do they do?
They're very normal. My one sister is a school teacher. The other one is works in chemical in biochemical engineering. I have a brother who's a chemical engineer and another brother who's an engineer. So a lot of cerebral activity there.
Yeah, and that was going to be your path as well.
My dad, this is going to be my fate, But when I was a kid, I had to, I suffered some abuse. My dad was kind of violent, and I had something to express or try to kind of trying to run away from, like a lot of people end up in Hollywood. You know?
When did you get to the age where you could physically take your dad in terms of the violence? Because you're a big guy, and, you know, I imagine around 15, 16 with your martial arts training,
Yeah.
you're probably a force to be reckoned with.
Sure, yeah. Well, he knew that. So when I was about 13, 14, he sent me away up to his parents, my grandparents, up north, far up north, around the Arctic Circle, and that's where I grew up. Because he kind of knew that it was going to end up being a real fight, you know, between a young man and an older man. He didn't want that, I don't think. So I didn't do martial arts when I was in Stockholm, but I started when I got up north. That's when I started.
Near the Arctic Circle.
Yes. Up where the days are very long in the summer and then non-existent. In the winter, it's pitch black all day.
That's got to have some sort of seasonal depression or something has to be baked into that, right?
Yeah. No, you need a lot of vodka and other things.
Well, you know, it is a thing, which is like, it doesn't feel right for a lot of folks to have a drink while the sun is out, but when the sun goes down, it seems okay. But if the sun is down at noon, then it would seem okay to have some vodka at noon.
Yeah, it would. No,
Why do they live by the Arctic Circle?
Good question. I don't know why I guess somebody came along in the summer and said, this looks great, guys, let's stop here 20,000 years ago. And, you know, with their spears and their fur coats, whatever. And yeah, it's, who knows? Why do people live in Alaska? I mean, it's,
your dad sent you away to live with them.
Yes, he sent me away.
The game I sort of like to play, because I find you get to the truth this way. I always say, if I said to your dad, why did you send Dolph, your son, away, what would he say? He wouldn't say, because I thought he could kick my ass in a few years. Would he?
No.
What would he say?
I think he would have said that he cared about me, and he tried to get me away from a lot of bad influences, because I was hanging out with kids that were doing drugs and drinking and stealing stuff. And I started becoming a thug myself and drinking, smoking, stealing motorcycles. And I think part of him knew that he was the cause of it, but he didn't know how to handle it. So it was a simple way for him to get rid of me. But I think he tried to save me on a deeper level.
You're about 13?
13, yeah. 13 and a half, yeah.
And going and living with your grandparents at 13 is by the Arctic Circle.
Yeah.
It seems quite a departure from what your past life was.
Yes, it was. I wasn't happy in the beginning at all. I wanted to go back to Stockholm, but, it was actually a good move, because my grandparents were quite nice. They were older. They were like in their early 70s, and they weren't violent or anything. Most of the other kids were ice hockey players, or they did skiing, or they were more athletic. So I felt like I wanted to become an athlete,
What would the equivalent American city be to Stockholm, do you think?
Stockholm would probably be like Minneapolis or something like that,
And then you moved to the equivalent to
it would be
Nebraska or something?
Yeah, Nebraska, or maybe Alaska.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. Like Anchorage.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. My grandparents played a big part in my upbringing as well. Like they can be useful sometimes, or you can not know them at all, or they can die, before your 5th birthday. But they can be impactful if it's done right.
I think so. The old societies, the grandparents had a role to bring up the kids, because the parents were very busy, on the field or hunting or something. So I think grandparents are great. I think they should fill an important function for sure.
So they essentially raised you, and you got away from that element and started into athletics.
Yes, started studying harder, realized I was pretty smart in school, and then I started doing ice hockey, judo, which was, martial arts, more of a competitive martial arts, but it's more of a sport. Like karate is a little more self-defense, a little tougher. So finally ended up in karate after about 2 years up there. When I was about 16, I started.
So then how do you square this with your dad? Because there's feelings about it, but on the other hand, ultimately it was the right thing to do, I guess.
I never talked with him about it. I couldn't really talk to him like that. We didn't really communicate like that about deeper things or emotional things at all. But I just took it for what it was. I try to get myself back together, get healthy, try to work on my confidence in martial arts and try to feel better about myself, feel stronger. I had feelings of not being able to protect my mom because she beat her too, not protect myself. So I felt kind of weak, and powerless. And I think martial arts made me feel more powerful and more secure,
Yeah. Yeah, that is trauma. I mean, beating you is trauma, but beating mom is, that's rough because you got to hear that.
You got to hear it. And then there's the other aspect is that she didn't defend me because obviously she could have just taken me and split, even back in the 60s, you could do that. For instance, he was married once before and my half-brother, and from that marriage, I think he beat his mom too, but she just took the kid and split. Mm-hmm. And they broke up after a few months. So she could have done that. She didn't. So, yeah, I think there was some deep level of, disappointment with her too. So you're kind of dealing with both.
Yeah. She didn't protect you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's elements of that, my family as well. And I don't get the violence part. It doesn't compute for me. Like I don't, I get violence. I just don't get the part where you smack your wife or your kid. Like it doesn't make sense to me. Is it only when he drank?
No, he didn't drink. My dad.
Oh, he didn't drink.
He didn't drink. No, he was. He had some mental issues. He probably. I will never know, but I believe when he grew up, my grandfather, when he was younger, he drank, and I think he was violent. I think he got beaten when he was a kid, and you do as you behave like your parents. You know how you catch yourself sounding like your dad sometimes, and you're like, oh shit,
No, it can be true. It was funny. I had a dinner last night with a friend of mine who we produced The Man Show and Crank Yank, some other TV shows I did. And he was telling me about his parents were sort of hippies. And I said, and he's very progressive and hippie-esque in his politics. And I said, well, my parents were kind of hippies too, but I kind of went the other way because I realized whatever they did wasn't working. It wasn't working for them. It wasn't working for their family. It wasn't working for society. So I decided I'll do something different than what they did. It might be, you can learn a lot from people, but you can also learn what not to do from people, study them, see that they're not having success, and sort of do the opposite of what those people would do. But I said to him at the end of the night, I said, it's funny, you went down your parents' road and I went away from my parents' road. So it's not baked in necessarily. You can reject it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't beat your kids, I'd imagine.
No, you can break the cycle of violence. Basically, I think he was beaten, and he beat me, and I could have, I guess I could have succumbed to it. I could have, become violent as well. I mean, but I chose martial arts, and that teaches you not to be violent. It kind of gives you a way to express yourself physically, and I think part of my life when I finally had my own family was part of what I wanted to do was give my kids a really safe and loving environment and upbringing. Stuff I didn't really felt that I had.
Yeah, and then we get into the age-old question, which is, when is it too safe?
Yeah.
When do they not learn a couple of good lessons
That's true. Yep.
and get a little soft? Because, you had a fire in your belly, and it's uncomfortable, but I had the same thing. I was uncomfortable, and I got motivated to work hard and to study and to get into this business and stuff like that because I was uncomfortable. I mean, I didn't have a pleasant life. It was a difficult life, and I wanted some air conditioning. I wanted a nice car. I wanted some safety. I wanted some security.
Yeah.
I wanted a savings account. I wanted stuff. And now I realize we've made everything so hospitable and so safe for everyone that I don't know that they have that desire. I don't know how your kids turned out or how they're turning out.
They're turning out really well in some ways. They're much more emotionally stable than I was. They have more safety in their lives. But you're right. Yeah. I mean, they don't have the drive that I had, the motivation. I had nothing to go back to.
Right.
I mean, when I first came over here, there was nothing to back me up. I couldn't go back to Sweden, a failure. I just wouldn't allow it. So they don't have that. So you're right. Yeah, it's tough if you do fairly well yourself. Then how much of that do you pass along to your kids, and how much do you make them fight for it? So it's not easy.
Here's what I've figured out. You're never going to really give them the eye of the tiger, as they say. But if they're passionate about something, that'll motivate them. So they need to find, because when someone is passionate about something, could be music, it could be kids or whatever that thing is. If you're passionate about something, it kind of transcends, that's your motivation, versus being a sort of generally driven, hungry, somewhat desperate, right? I mean, you were desperate, right?
Yeah, I was desperate to, I didn't know what I was desperate, why I was desperate. I realized later, obviously, it's called escape behavior. You have trauma and you try to escape from it by physical action, it could be drinking or drugs, or it could be sexual affairs, like you're trying to escape something, but you can't, and so you have to deal with it. My kids don't have that, but, on the other hand, when you have a dad who's a celebrity, you grow up with other issues too, that may motivate them too, to maybe prove something to the world, and so they have their own driving force, like different than mine.
Was your dad around long enough to see all your success, or some of it?
Yeah, he was. He saw some of it in the beginning, and he was really happy. And I think he appreciated that I made it. Like I did what he couldn't do.
Is that what he wanted?
I think he wanted to get away from Sweden. He was the one who told me, if you want to make it in your life, you got to go to America. Sweden, it's too small. It's socialistic. He hated the system there, and I always remember that. So I think that was what motivated me. And so he kind of, I think he was happy to see that, even though he was quite ill at the end. But I think it made him happy to see my success. Yes.
I also sort of think that these people that we speak of, they don't really fully understand what they've done and how they're perceived. And maybe we're all guilty of that, but I think I can speak to my parents. I don't think they sort of understood what they did or their roles or how it was. They had a view of themselves. Their kids did not view them the way they viewed themselves. You know what I mean? Like your dad may have thought of himself as a decent guy who had to discipline his kid every once in a while, but was always looking out for him and wanted what was best for him or something. Do you think he had a version of himself that's highly different than your version?
Yeah, for sure. But I think also that generation was more disconnected, emotionally disconnected. Like there is not they didn't have self-awareness. That's what you're saying. They didn't know what they were doing. They were acting out. They were acting out shit from their childhood that they had no idea that they were violent or, I don't think so. I don't think he even thought about that. I mean, I think he felt bad about it, but he had no way to control it. He wouldn't admit that he had any issues,
So you come here, what age are you when you come to America?
Well, first time I was 18, I came to study. When I moved here, I was 26, when I finally moved here to study as well.
And did you take a job?
No, when I first came, I was a student. First, I was here for a year. Then I came back, and I had a master's degree in chemical engineering, and I was going to study. I had a Fulbright scholarship to MIT, and I was going to study engineering. But in Australia, I'd met Grace Jones, who was a famous singer back in the day. Mm-hmm. And now I was hanging out with her at Studio 54 in New York. And
it's different.
Yeah, it was slightly different. I ran into, Andy Warhol, Michael Jackson, a few people like that. And just started studying some acting a little bit on the side, did some modeling, and I worked as a doorman at the Limelight, which was like a church.
You were doing security for Grace Jones?
In the beginning, I was, yeah. Yeah.
She's, I'm trying to think of how to describe her. Sort of, I don't know. She was an influencer before there were influencers. She was a singer, but not really traditionally. She was like a model, but not really traditional, Yeah. I don't know. Was she 6 foot tall?
Not quite, but she was tall, yeah. You're right. She was like, she grew up in Jamaica. Her dad was a preacher. And then she became a model, moved to Paris, spoke fluent French. She was African-American, but with a French accent and French manners. And
there's the two of you?
There she is, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. She had dance songs.
Yeah, that's actually on the set of a Bond movie, View to a Kill, where I did a little small role in it. Just somebody was sick and I stepped in and did something. But she played the bad girl opposite Chris Walken. So I got to meet him, which was interesting, Cool.
Yeah, and I haven't heard much from her lately. Is she in this country? Is she touring? Like, what did you keep up at all?
She lives in Jamaica, and what was funny was when I was in London. I mentioned before for that movie Expendables and Aquaman, and I had to go to a doctor. It was for my cancer treatment, but to do an MRI. And I was there and I was late, for my appointment, and I was arguing with the nurse. Hey, come on, I'm working. I came from the film set. I'm 20 minutes late. Sorry, but can you take me? She said, no, absolutely not, and blah, blah, blah. And then there was another person there waiting, and I glanced over, and there was a woman sitting there with some kind of, those, leather biking helmets from the old 30s.
Yeah.
Right? And then and some kind of big wrap around her, and I was like, only one person could dress like that. And sure as hell, it was Grace. And she was in London for doing a show, and we hugged and I talked to her a little bit and it turned out I found out she lives in London and Jamaica. And
was she undergoing some treatment?
No, she was just doing.
She was in the office?
She was in the MRI office. I mean the MRI suite where they had like did the MRIs.
But she was just hanging out, or she had an issue?
She was also late, of course, for her appointment, 1 hour late.
1 hour. Well, she's on Jamaican time.
That wasn't much in her book. Usually it was 2 or 3 hours. But anyway.
Well, she was getting an MRI.
She was going to get one for her knee, I think.
Oh, okay. So she didn't have any cancer.
No,
I thought it was a cancer thing.
No.
Yeah, so you guys, I mean, the most unlikely couple, I would say, hard to find a less likely couple. I mean, you are... your physicality, her physicality, your color, her color, like it just seemed crazy. You ever bring her back to Sweden? That would have raised an eyebrow or two, I imagine.
Funny you should mention that because when Rocky IV opened, I'd been gone for about 4 or 5 years, because when I started acting and I quit MIT, I felt really bad. I didn't want to tell my parents. So, in those days, there were no mobile phones. I mean, you talked on the phone every couple of months, whatever. So I finally came back, and Grace came with me for the premiere, in Sweden. And it was a big deal because, Rocky movies were big worldwide. But I set up a meeting with my family. And my brothers and sisters, they were excited to meet her, and then my mom. But my dad, of course, he was he was busy that day. He couldn't make it. Mm-hmm. So I think...
you think he was prejudiced?
No, I think he just couldn't handle the commotion, Because I heard from my brother that he had one day, thinking his son was going to MIT, which was his favorite school. It's a great engineering school. He was sitting reading the newspaper, evening paper one day, and there was a picture from Studio 54 of Grace Jones and her hunk, boy, her toy boy,
Mm-hmm.
this guy in leather pants, no shirt, and sunglasses, and it was me. So my dad was like...
What year was that?
It was 1984, I think.
Yeah. Studio 54 was quite the scene in the day. I don't know that we could ever really replicate that ever again, just because of laws and different societal things and whatever. But you must have been. Here's my assessment. I think those people. Oh, is that the picture?
Yeah, one of them. I think. Similar, yeah.
Oh my God, you got to see his picture. And yeah, she's wearing a yellow cab hat. You guys, that crew is very aesthetically oriented, I have figured out. Like, they like the aesthetics. And they like the aesthetics of everything, but they like the aesthetics of humans as well. So you were more aesthetically pleasing than most of the people that were in that place. So sort of had to make you a kind of de facto celebrity in that group, even though there were tons of celebrities around.
Yes, it did. Actually, I was one of the first weeks I was in New York. I was going to start MIT in the fall, and I was with Grace at another club. I think it was Club A, it was called, and I was, she went off somewhere in the bathroom, and I was just standing there, and this little guy comes up to me, and he took a picture with an Instamatic, and he says, "Hey, what are you famous for?" And I was like, "Nothing, as far as I know." And it was Andy Warhol, right? So he said, "I'll put you in my magazine." And, of course, it was Interview Magazine. And you're right. Yeah, they had this game, I realized later, because I've seen the pictures. His photographer, they had this sort of bet that the photographer could get if it was a guy, to take all his clothes off to Andy, so he could report to Andy, what what should I say, the physicality of this guy, right?
We're talking penis size?
Yeah, probably, yes. Penis size, yes. So I was there, and it was funny because it was a big deal for me to be in Interview Magazine and all that sort of photography. Hey, can you take your shirt off? I'll just flex some muscles, fine. And then it was down to his shorts, and then he was about to ask me to go further, and then of course Grace shows up. She's like, "Stop that shit," Grace.
Oh, really?
So
he
never found out.
I don't know if Andy Warhol was gay or bi or what exactly.
I don't know either. I mean, he was a bit asexual, I think, to some degree. I saw the Warhol Diaries. Have you seen that? Mm-hmm. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I remember those days. I think he had lovers, a lot of Grace's friends were gay, and all the people that worked for her, and it was an interesting world for me. From that small town north of the Arctic Circle, you didn't really have, there weren't too many gay clubs up there. So
you must have been sort of the Moby Dick white whale of gays.
No pun intended.
Yeah, they must have wanted to land you, man. You had to be the ultimate prize in the gay community.
I guess so, yeah. I do remember that I bought this black Yamaha 1200 motorcycle, and I was driving around. She lived in the West Village.
Grace.
And I was Grace, and I stayed with her for 6 months. And I was driving around on this motorcycle with, leather pants with no shirt. And I made all these friends. Everybody was so friendly with me. It was like inviting me to all kinds. And I thought, wow, America's so nice. People are so friendly. But
well, you were leaning into it, as they say.
Yeah.
But where did that come from? I mean, considering your past and sort of martial arts and chemical engineering, those are very, I don't know, sort of humble endeavors in a certain sense. It's not really leather pants and no shirt, so where did that come from, or was it always there?
Well, Grace brought it out, some of it. I think she brought some of it out. I'd done some modeling before I met her to make some money in Australia, because I could make cash, and I didn't have a work permit or anything. So I think that, and I used to do some school plays when I was younger. I think that it was always there. I think I had some kind of, I wanted to express myself. I wanted to be loved, I think, by other people or noticed. I think that to sort of to sort of come to terms with that feeling I had inside of feeling like I was worthless, because my dad used to say I was worthless. So
he would say that to you.
Yeah, he would say that. So I think part of it, of getting that affection, or the,
was that, would that have been permissible in Sweden?
To say that I was worthless?
To ride around on a motorcycle with no shirt, like would they've accepted that there?
No, I don't think so. No.
It had to be sort of New York.
Had to be Greenwich Village in the 80s. This
Right.
is, like somebody said, it was it from the invention of the pill to AIDS, right? There was about 20 years or so from the late 50s, 60s to like 1983.
Yeah, so birth control to AIDS.
Birth control to AIDS.
Yeah.
Where there was this period of people kind of...
You do whatever you want.
Yeah, do whatever you want.
You know what I always say that era was? I missed it, but it was the best. I always say pre-AIDS...
Yeah.
Mid-Coke, which is, Coke is good for you. They didn't have a problem with cocaine. It was like cocaine was good for you, and there's no such thing as AIDS. So let's start this party.
Exactly right. Yeah, I remember sitting at dinners with Grace and her, record company rep and a bunch of people, and they were passing the Coke vial around the table. I mean, at an 8 o'clock dinner, in a big restaurant, there was nobody said a word.
Well, I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of stuff they want us to judge.
Yeah.
But it's like ball players used to smoke cigarettes in the locker room because they didn't think it was bad. Like now we go, oh, who would do that? Well, that's what they did. Like they didn't really know any better. It was acceptable.
Some of them lived to be 90 anyway.
Yeah. And so did you ever get into drugs yourself?
Oh yeah, I tried it. I tried most things, not everything, not heroin, but no, I tried drugs. I mean, that was part of the scene. Lucky for me, I always had to be in shape. I always had to get up early and work out and things. So I never really, and didn't take over my life really. Mm-hmm. At some point later in life, when I was in my late 40s, it sort of, the trauma came up. Before I started therapy, it all came up and kind of bit me in the ass, and I ended up drinking a lot and getting in trouble. I could have destroyed myself then. That's when I got divorced and went through kind of a low period. Yeah, before I moved back to LA.
Where were you living then?
I married a Swedish woman, and she loved Spain. Oh. And I married her. I lived in Marbella for 10 years, 15 years, and I had 2 kids and grew up there.
In Spain?
Spain. She was Swedish, but she was kind of half Spanish. She grew up in Spain. So,
how was Spain?
It was great. No, it was wonderful. Great wine, good people, very relaxing. I sort of, on a personal level, I think my trauma kind of came up and kind of started ruling my life more. And I kind of slowly, the discipline and all that from the martial arts days were kind of getting, to some degree, wiped out from show business and, living in Spain, doing movies that weren't that great and not feeling good about myself, and then start drinking too much and, knowing that I should have been back in LA. I shouldn't have moved because I still had things I wanted to do as an actor, but I couldn't when I lived there. So, and I had to, support the family. So it was like, it was going back and forth 10 times a year, and it kind of wore me out. And I was, very, very bad shape for a while.
It's nice you came out the other end.
Yeah, I know.
Got some therapy and did all that. It's also kind of weird when stuff hits you later in life, which I've had some experience with that, which is when I was young, I just thought once you made it out of your 30s, you were just sort of an adult and old and, whatever. I didn't, it's interesting talking to people who are having these kinds of thoughts in their 50s or their 60s or experiencing these things or setbacks or traumas or something. And it's like, when I was young, I just thought, well, you're 60, you start thinking about retiring and you play crossword puzzles or something and watch daytime TV. Like, you wear a cardigan sweater, you have a cat. Like, where does this all come from? These sort of almost modern problems or something. And maybe it was always this way and I just too naive. Or maybe it's different now. And maybe it's connected to longevity. Like if you go, okay, you don't want to be an old man at 60 anymore. Fine, you want to be a young man at 60, but you're going to have young man thoughts and problems then too, not old man non-problems and thoughts. Or I don't know. I don't know if there's a connection.
I think there is. Yeah, I think people are, you're active much later in life as you're in your, when you were 65 years old. When I was a kid, you're retired, like you said. You're sitting at home watching TV or reading the paper, and there wasn't the healthcare wasn't as good, and if some people were active when they were older, but not that many. Especially in my profession, a lot of actors died young. They drank a lot, smoked a lot, and didn't make it that far. But I think they're certainly related somehow. Look, the Rolling Stones are still playing. I mean, who would have believed that in the 60s, that they're going to play when they're in their 80s? It's like unbelievable. How does that happen?
It is. I mean, you see the Rolling Stones or the Who or some of these bands, or how about some of these politicians? Like they never gone anywhere my whole life. I wish Maxine Waters would go somewhere at some point, but she doesn't. She's just there. I remember I did Politically Incorrect, Bill Maher's show, and probably would have been about 1999. I did it a million times, but it was probably like 1999 or something. And I did it with Maxine Waters, and I talked to her a little bit backstage, and I was trying to talk to her about the morning after pill. And I said that it's something you should know about because we would talk about it on Loveline, and it's important. And she just sort of looked at me and she said, the science isn't in on it yet. And I said, yeah, it is in on it, and it could be effective, and maybe some people in your constituency might benefit from it. And she was like, I'm not interested in that or something. And then I went back to the radio that night to do Loveline, and I told Dr. Drew that Maxine Waters was a crazy person. I said, she's this old crazy lady who's running whatever. And that was 26 years ago, and she's still just there, crazy, doing her thing. And I was like, it is, I mean, maybe it's good. Dolph Lundgren's 67 and, working on 10 different projects. I don't want to live in a world with no Dolph Lundgren or no Sylvester Stallone in it,
Yeah, no, you're right. It's true. I think about that a lot. Especially with the cancer treatment, you think about your mortality and how people, back in the day, life was a short, brutal affair. But they still managed to make a name for themselves. Napoleon, when he died when he was 40-something, 48 or something, and you mention that anywhere in the world, and you'll know who you're talking about. And
Yeah.
Julius Caesar, and they weren't that old, but they, it lasted for a couple of thousand years.
How's Stallone? I mean, I know him a little bit. He's a big, passionate guy, always punching his hand. It's like he gets all fired up and he's just punching his hand. The guy's got a motor.
Yeah. No, he's one of those guys you'll never stop. And he lives in Florida, and I was just there for a benefit last week, and I missed him, but he was filming in Atlanta. No, we're good friends, and it's lasted over 40 years now. And we've done, 6 films together, I think, which is kind of unusual over a 40-year period. So it's something special. We beat each other up for about a year in the ring between the training and the movie, and it sort of sticks with you. You did boxing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. It's a different type of men relate in other ways. Yes,
Well, there's always a kind of a bond. Look, I don't know, Joe Frazier, Muhammad Ali were good friends. After they retired and. But was there ever any friction? Because, Stallone's, you're both alphas, and, when alphas come together in the ring, sometimes there can be a little friction.
Well, there was a little friction, but he was the boss. I was just a young kid. He was a big, world-famous movie star, and I just followed orders, basically. We had a couple of run-ins later where... he was very tough as a director and as a producer, and could get very kind of hard on the actors, including me. So
You're like Expendable stuff?
Yeah, Expendables. Yeah, we had a couple of run-ins. He apologized afterwards. I thought about knocking him out a few times on the set. I thought about it, but I didn't do it. I called my wife, and she said, "Don't do it." Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I don't know. People used to communicate a little differently. Maybe he's from a older school. Look, anyone who's had football coaches, boxing coaches, and construction foremen, like I've had, you get used to being talked to a certain way. Like it doesn't. That's what happens. They just do it.
Yeah, my karate sensei, I've had hard feelings about him too many times. He was very harsh on me, He felt like he wanted to punch the guy out, but you just don't, you just take it.
What did he want, do you think?
No, I think he was just a stickler for detail. And sometimes, when I became a better fighter, I maybe knew myself better than he did. Like I knew what worked and what didn't. And he sometimes wouldn't listen to me, and I would have to do it my way, and he would get really upset. But, I won the championships. It was okay.
Right.
With Stallone, it was the same thing. He's a very driven guy, and he wants it his way. And sometimes, if you push it, you can overstep your boundaries and come across as, as offensive to people.
But I'm guessing you have a pretty thick skin.
Yeah, I do. I do. I told you I didn't do anything. I didn't.
So was it with Rocky IV? God, what a crazy life-changing moment for any actor, especially an unknown actor.
Yeah.
That you go from who is this guy to everyone knows who you are, but probably thinks you're Russian.
Yeah. No, they did. Most people thought I was Russian. they were really upset with me, especially up in north of 120th Street, New York, when I got up there, and people, because I killed Apollo, so it was like
Oh,
they hated me,
yeah. The
so,
black community, not a fan because you killed Apollo
It
Creed.
was lucky I went out with Grace. That kind of, otherwise they would have killed me, But.
Well, he really looked like a boxer in the ring.
Apollo.
Yeah.
I mean, Carl.
Carl Weathers. Yeah.
He was very natural, a very good physique, natural physique.
Yeah.
Moved very well.
He was athletic.
Yeah.
And you can always tell the athletic guys by the way they back up.
Yeah.
He kind of floated back, other guys that are a little sort of heavy-footed, when they back up, watch their feet. When they back up, they look heavy and a little off balance or something.
Yeah.
And it's stilted. He kind of floated back, and it's the same, with Sugar Ray Leonard, Muhammad Ali, when these guys, you watch them back up.
Yeah.
And you can see their footwork, and then you can see sort of the fast twitch muscle stuff, and then you go, oh, that guy's athletic because he's rhythmic.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Very athletic. You're right. He was. It's interesting because I watched a movie once in a while when I see it, just by not that I don't watch it myself, but if I see it on TV or something, and I see the fight, then I noticed that two things: that he moves very well on his feet. And then I was watching my stance, and I had this kind of long stance because I was used to karate, which is because you're kicking, you have to stay further away from the opponent. So, and the Soviet fighters had that stance in those days. It was like the kind of classic with a pretty long stance and with a jab, and I had that down. It was almost like a natural for me, and I think that's another reason I got the part, because I had that. It's hard to teach somebody that stuff.
Right.
Like you said with Carl, you can't teach somebody to move like that. You have to, either you do it or you don't.
Yes. Yeah. He did it. There's those boxing movies where they kind of teach the guys how to punch, and I'll tell you where you can always tell the guy can't actually box. It's not in the boxing scenes. It's when they get into the ring and they're doing a little shadow boxing, and they just go, and you go, that guy doesn't box. It's not the punches. They can kind of work that and choreograph that. It's the shadow boxing that looks sort of stilted.
Stiff, yeah.
Stiff. It looks stiff. And they always do it. They get in the ring and they go, and I go, oh, that guy can't box.
Yeah. And they don't have the head movement either.
Yeah,
they're kind of, because in boxing you need to move your head too. You get
it's really about a relaxation that they don't have, because they think that boxing is about aggression. So they kind of go, they gnash their teeth together and they make their fists real tight. And I was like, no, the guys who really are good at it are loose. They're they're relaxed. But it's the same with hitting a baseball and stuff. They just kind of look relaxed. Golf, every sport, when the people really do it, there's a kind of a relaxation they have.
You're right. That's got lost a little bit because Hollywood put the muscle suits on everybody.
Right.
So you kind of equate big muscles with good athletic ability. But it's not necessarily true, especially not in fighting arts.
No, it is kind of funny that the smoother guys, like a lot of, Roberto Duran was kind of smooth, Muhammad Ali wasn't a big muscle-bound guy, No. Foreman was, and Ken Norton and guys like that were real muscular, but he was kind of smooth, and the smoother guys, they tend to be quicker or more fluid or something. I think it's part of it.
Yeah, timing. It's the timing. It's when you hit the guy, because if you're a 200-pound plus man, you hit somebody on the button, you don't need to have big, just enough to knock somebody. It doesn't take that much to knock somebody out if you hit them at the right time. So you're right. Ali had that, and Sugar Ray as well. He wasn't very muscular.
No, I mean he was in great shape.
Yeah,
but he wasn't overly built. But Sugar Ray, and I told this to him, which he enjoyed, which is he gets a lot of credit for being fast and flashy and everything, but he really has a heart of a lion.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, his crazy heart.
Yeah.
And it sometimes gets a little lost because he was flashy and he was quick and he was charismatic and he was nice looking and everything else. But his heart was nuts when it came to fighting.
And he had a lot of aggression too, which people forget sometimes.
Yes.
Like when he fought, Thomas Hearns or like Hagler against Hagler.
Yeah.
Like he could match Hagler.
Yeah.
Hagler's aggression, he matched it.
Yeah. Hearns probably lost that first fight, but it was the halcyon days of those. And I don't know, it's been a lot of guys making business decisions now. It's not quite as exciting as it was back in those days. And their business decision was, I want to be the baddest guy in this weight division, and they just went out to try to prove it. They weren't there trying to not get hit and get a paycheck.
No, I mean, when you had Foreman, Frazier, Ali, Ernie Shavers, you had a bunch of Ken Norton, you had 5 or 6 really tough guys out there. I don't think the heavyweights now would have a hard time against those guys, pretty sure.
Oh, sorry. First fight, Leonard wins by TKO 14th round. Yeah, and the second fight was the split decision where I think Hearns probably won.
Oh, yeah, Hearns Hagler. Hearns Leonard. Yeah. I was thinking Hagler Leonard.
Yeah, Hagler Leonard was great.
Yeah.
Hagler, I understand Hagler's argument, which is, look, I got the belt, you got to take the belt.
Yeah.
He didn't take the belt, he just did well. And he also did that thing where, like, with 30 seconds left, he'd get real busy and do some shoe shining with 30 seconds, and it would look like he won the round, but he just sort of won the last quarter of the round, But it's smart. Why not go out?
Yeah, he was smart.
Go out that way. And then, Hagler moves to Italy, starts acting, never comes back, never gets in the ring again, turns down what would have been, by today's pay stand, he probably turned down $30 million for a rematch in 19 whatever. I mean, it'd be like saying, I will turn down $150 million. I'm going to Italy.
No, I felt sorry for him. I actually did. For that fight, I was hired by, I think it was ABC or NBC to do like a pre-fight little segment, and I interviewed both of them. So I spoke to Hagler, I spoke to Hearns, and Leonard, and met his wife, and Hagler and his wife. But I think I felt bad for him because he kind of dropped everything, and his life just spiraled out of control from that. Hagler's life.
Yeah, I knew he moved to Italy and just started acting.
Yeah.
But I don't know why. He wasn't a guy that was uncomfortable in the ring.
No.
And he wasn't a guy that didn't know how to train. And there was an appetite for a rematch. And I don't know. I respect it.
Yeah.
He just said he felt like he got robbed. He had an argument, and he just went, "Fuck this! I'm going to Italy."
Didn't he get heavily into drugs or alcohol or something like that?
It would make sense that he did because
I
don't know. I loved all the stuff. I love that Roberto Duran, when he beat Sugar Ray Leonard, just went on a tour of eating and drinking and partying, right? He went back to Panama and just put on like 50 pounds immediately, right?
Yeah.
And that's why Sugar Ray Leonard said, I want to rematch as fast as I can. Because he watched Roberto Duran put on 50 pounds and start smoking cigars and drinking tequila every night. And he went, I want one now. And Duran agreed to it, but now Duran had to kill himself losing 50 pounds to get in the ring, and that then was the No Mas fight because it was too much on him. But those stories are great. Dolph,
yes,
you've been very generous with your time.
Thanks.
I shall give your vodka a plug, Hard Cut Vodka. Where can we find it?
Bevmo in California, and also, so it's exclusive with Bevmo, and also DTC, GoPuff, and Flaviar.
And projects coming out soon. Anything to look out for?
And I got to give you a T-shirt with the logo here.
Oh, thank you.
Here you go, man.
Appreciate it.
It's good Gold's Gym quality.
Oh, yeah, feels good.
Yeah, well, I actually have a documentary about my life that includes the cancer journey and everything. That's going to come out this year sometime. Hopefully, take it to film festival in Venice or Toronto.
Well, and we don't have a platform for it yet?
Not yet, no.
And it chronicles the cancer journey.
That's kind of the jump off point for going back and looking at my life and going through what I went through with my dad and all the
Oh, man.
going to Hollywood and everything. Yeah,
I cannot wait. I love a doc. I'm a sucker for all docs.
yeah.
And this one I can't wait. So when do you think it might be out?
This fall, I hope. Yeah.
Oh, good. All right, Dolph, good seeing you. We'll do some news with Mayhem right after this. Homes.com. Some might say Homes.com are the best shopping site around. It may be Homes.com's super comprehensive and transparent agent directory, or maybe it's that Homes.com is the only site that always directly connects you with the listing agent who knows the home the best. Perhaps it's because Homes.com has the most in-depth neighborhood content of any home shopping site that's extensively researched to highlight the personality of each neighborhood. Homes.com goes above and beyond to bring home shoppers the in-depth info they need to find the right home. Homes.com, we've done your homework. O'Reilly Auto Parts. Yeah, you got a car. You want to keep it going? Well, that's where O'Reilly comes in. O'Reilly Auto Parts offers friendly, helpful service and the parts knowledge you need to maintain and do repairs on your vehicle. Always been a car guy, always been an O'Reilly guy. Wherever I moved, I would just find the O'Reilly that was closest to where I lived, and I'd do all my own work on my own car. It's good. It's good to know. So, whether you're a car aficionado or an auto novice, you're going to find the employees at O'Reilly Auto Parts are knowledgeable, helpful, and best of all, they are friendly. So, stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Do it today. Or you can visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/Adam. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/Adam.
It's time for Nicaraguan Name That Movie with Adam's buddy Oswaldo. See if you can guess which movie this famous line is from.
I must break you.
If you said Rocky IV,
I must break you.
You're correct. Now, back to the show.
Oh, so good. So good. All right, what do you got in the news there, man?
Well, first up, the DOJ investigating SoCal homelessness spending for fraud and hints at arrests. California's new attorney announced Tuesday he's investigating billions of dollars of homeless spending for fraud and corruption and promised to arrest individuals found to have violated federal law. Bill Asali. Yeah, it's a new guy.
Okay, listen. How can it go any other way? There's so much money being allocated to something.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it's a bullet train or homeless or whatever, you're just going to start writing checks for billions of dollars.
I'll take the money.
Then some of that money's going to go somewhere. I mean, it's just like the PPE stuff or whatever the COVID fraud, people getting money from prison. Yeah. You know all about it.
I know the guy who did it, allegedly.
The guy who's in prison now, the guy who wrote the rap song about
He was in the prison doing that PPE stuff. I knew a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy. that was the guy.
Yeah,
Allegedly.
How is it possible for the government just to print money and just start pushing it out into the trillions without a bunch of grift and graft? I mean, of course it's going to happen. Now, here's kind of the problem with Los Angeles. And here's what I would say if I was pocketing a lot of homeless money or anything.
All right.
If somebody said to me, look, Adam, we're going to put you in charge of graffiti removal. We're going to give you trillions of dollars. We're going to billions. I would say to my people, okay, let's all buy Lamborghinis. Let's all start doing a lot of coke. Let's all eat caviar for breakfast. But we got to get rid of some of the graffiti because eventually they're going to just be walking around going, what the fuck is going on? We're giving you all these millions of dollars and billions of dollars, and I still see more graffiti than there was before we started giving you the money. So the problem with all the homeless shit in LA is it's the money spent with zero results. I don't think most people, let's just say somebody said, look, for every, let's see, what's a billion is 1,000, wait, is that 100 million? No, that's 1,000 million.
1,000 million.
1,000 million. If somebody said, look, for every 1,000 million we put into this, there's going to be like a couple hundred million that are just going down the fucking toilet. Like, I'd go, all right, well, at least there'll be 800 million worth of results. But we don't get any results. Yeah. We get more of what we don't want. So we get more graffiti and then 24 billion spent on graffiti removal. So
there are 75,000 homeless individuals here in Los Angeles. And I'm sorry, that's in California.
Right.
45,000 in Los Angeles.
Right. And so here's what they can't. This is an ongoing problem, and it's not the homeless problem. Did you get a boner when you met Dolph?
Man, Dolph Lundgren is an icon.
Fucking.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, Mayhem had lived when he walked in here, man.
I just came from sparring, and then Drago's here. What the hell?
Yeah,
I love this show.
Find that. There's an article or tweet that I told Andrew to find about homelessness in a new bill. I think there's some new bill in Los Angeles or California bill. But here's what I've said. Okay, listen to me, everyone. I'm going to have a mental breakdown.
Don't do it.
I had, as you guys know, Gavin Newsom was in here years ago, and I said, here's who the homeless are, and here's what the problem is. And he told me I didn't know what I was talking about. And then Dr. Drew, who's a board-certified physician and an addiction medicine specialist, tried to volunteer his time for the LA City Council to talk about the homeless problem, and they kicked his ass out. They didn't want him volunteering.
Yeah, I
they
know
would
a lot
not
about
take
this
a
subject,
board-certified physician. Okay, so you have 10 yentas in the city council who know nothing about addiction, dealing with a problem that is solely about addiction, kicking off a doctor who specializes in addiction. So, do they want to solve this problem? I sure as fuck.
They sure want to dance around looking like they're trying to solve the problem.
If I said, look, we got a problem here with this warehouse because it's always leaking, the roof is always leaking, there's water everywhere, and the furniture gets ruined, and a lot of my important stuff, documents, they get ruined by the water. We got a leaky problem, and there's all of us sitting around going, man, this is a problem. This is a problem. And then some point, some guy goes, I'm a certified roofing contractor, and I would like to volunteer to come to your warehouse to discuss this problem of a leaky roof, and I'd go, get the fuck off my property. Get out of here. And we'd all circle the wagons, and then the fucking LA Times would write stories about the roofer saying he was no good. I was like, oh, okay, problem solvers. How would one solve any problem if one cannot recognize the root of the problem? And so if somebody said, those Twin Towers are gone. What happened? They were possessed by the devil. So they fell down. Okay. No. I think airplanes hit them. And I think now we have reinforced cockpit doors now, so airplanes don't hit other shit. But if you just said they were possessed by the devil, then we would not have reinforced cockpit doors, and maybe more airplanes would be hitting more stuff.
Yeah.
I can't read this from here,
tiny.
Dawson. Maybe you can read it. But it's an assembly bill. What is the assembly bill, Dawson?
Homelessness is a policy failure primarily caused by the affordability of housing in California.
Okay, not true.
Yeah.
Not true.
That's
I don't know
inaccurate, yeah.
anyone who's ever been homeless because of their paycheck, but keep going.
With over 1 million extremely low-income households spending more than one half their income on rent, and not the result of personal failings of people experiencing homelessness.
They're homeless because they're junkies.
Mm-hmm.
They're fucking junkies, or they're crazy, or they're both. That's why they're homeless. I used to have 3 roommates in a 1-bedroom apartment. I shared a futon with a dude. And then later on, me and another dude had his brother's bunk beds in the same fucking room, like we were 9, except we were 23. But fucking imagine trying to bring a chick back to a bunk bed.
Oh, yeah.
All right, but okay, sorry, keep going.
You got to hear the rest of this.
The rest is-
The housing crisis is the result of decades of failed housing policy coupled with structural and institutional racism. And a lack of sufficient investment in affordable housing and other programs to address homelessness.
Oh, okay.
I think take the race thing out, and it's kind of true that, the rent is really high everywhere.
Yes.
But that's no excuse to spin out into a drunken stupor and just be homeless all the time, methed out of your mind.
I don't know. Look, who wrote this fucking retarded bill?
Looks like Laura Powell.
Oh, dumb chick number 7 who's fucking running California into the ground. All right.
She's a homeless expert.
Not anything. All right.
Well, she's got an Esquire at the end of her name, so she may be a lawyer.
All right. So good luck solving this problem that you do not know what the root cause is. So
They're going to do a full audit. Bill Asaley is calling for some heads, it sounds like.
well, okay. First off, you fucks can't build housing. Other people build housing, but you will not let them build housing because you regulate them to death. So it's not affordable, so they can't do it. So all of your regulation is what caused not enough housing. But even if there was enough housing, drug addicts they like doing drugs. And there's plenty of shelters, and they do not avail themselves of the shelter beds because the rule is you got to be clean to use the shelter.
I'll tell
and they
you from
won't
my
do it.
experience that there isn't a lot of shelters. And from my experience that guys get stuck in no man's land of just a drug haze and
Well, I
just
shouldn't
quit.
I should not say a lot of shelter beds. There are resources that one could avail themselves of.
It's true.
If you are a sober mother who's freshly divorced, like fucking Gavin Newsom's comments, go fucking pull him up. Pull up his take on homelessness. He's insane.
Backwards,
He's clinically insane. He thinks it's a mom. If there is a mom, if that mom has a couple of kids, and that mom is sober, and that mom is divorced, and that mom has a work ethic, there are places and things, there's an apparatus for her to go.
I went through it.
And first, it's her. Okay, first thing, it's her family.
Yeah.
We've all had people crash on the sofa. I've had plenty of dudes crash on my sofa, and I've crashed on other people's sofas.
Yeah.
And we had homelessness overnight, as I've said, Palisades, Malibu, Altadena. Overnight, there were thousands and thousands of Los Angelinos without a home. So this is your definition, no home. Did any of them sleep on the sidewalk, or did they use their apparatus? They got on the phone. They said, hey, man, I need to crash out. And they got up and they did it.
At Dr. Drew's house.
At Dr. Drew's house. That's what I did. The point is it's not about housing. If it was about housing, then those people who were dehoused would sleep. A percentage of them would sleep. I would reckon 0 people were put out by the fire spent the night outside the next night. That's 0%. So it's not about that. Wait, do you have that clip?
They camped out in their G-Wagons.
It's so good. It's so good. Morgan & Morgan. Here's a dirty little secret that the insurance industry may want to keep under wraps. Insurance companies profit by holding on to your money for as long as possible. So, after an accident, they might do whatever they can to delay or deny your claim. This way, they can keep those profits growing. Morgan & Morgan fights hard against these corporations to make sure you get every dollar you deserve. I love these Morgan & Morgan guys. Met with them quite a few times, and I got to tell you, being represented is a big deal. Competent representation is a big deal in this day and time. When Morgan & Morgan takes your case, they're almost always going after the big insurance companies and not individuals at fault. There's a reason why Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. It's Morgan & Morgan, right, Dawson?
Hiring the wrong firm could be disastrous. Hiring the right firm could substantially increase your settlement. With Morgan & Morgan, it's easy to get started, and their fee is free unless they win. Just visit forthepeople.com/Adam or dial #law #529. That's forthepeople.com/Adam or dial #law #529. This is a paid advertisement.
American Giant. Did you know that 60% of the clothes that we buy end up in a landfill within a year of being made? Ugh. That's ugly American stuff. Historically, our clothes were something we held on to for a while. You remember that? Stuff. God, yeah. But big apparel companies constantly find ways to make clothes faster and cheaper, turning clothes into disposable items. American Giant is about durable, non-disposable products. They make clothes built to last. So buying from American Giant is an investment, not just in the clothes, but a community trying to do things the right way. Their stuff is great. It gets better as it ages. You wash it like a fine wine. Through American ingenuity and innovation, they went against the current to do better. They believe in a new kind of conscious buying because small changes can add up to something big. So, do your part. Let's get some American Giant apparel. Am I right, Dawson?
This season, snag the hoodie that will bring you comfort for life, the American Giant Classic Full Zip. And save 20% on your first order at american-giant.com. When you use code ADAM at checkout, that's 20% off your first order at american-giant.com, code ADAM.
This notion of like the guy's a hardworking, God-fearing family member who lost his job and now had to take to the streets is total and utter bullshit.
But what about the picture of real homelessness, which is a poor mom with 2 kids with a husband who took off and left her, who's sitting there struggling on that minimum wage job, and all of a sudden now is out in the streets and sidewalks desperately trying to find some help, get her life back, can't get those kids into childcare. I think
that's what happened to
Can't
Jewel.
afford them. That's the tough thing.
Yeah, that's
and
tough.
That's a picture of family homelessness in this country.
That's a postage stamp.
No,
the real picture is bigger than the AIDS quilt, and those are crazy junkies.
Yeah, but no. So what? No, see,
but no. Well, how are you going to solve a fucking problem if you just go, but no? All right. So now he's in charge, and he's worried about moms that have been divorced and have a full-time job, and they're out on the street, except for that doesn't exist.
It's like the Hallmark version of homelessness. I've seen real homelessness.
I don't know.
Something else.
You know what I can't figure out about that fucking life-size, fucking full-size tard over there named Gavin Newsom? Who's he worried about offending? I don't know. What's his constituency? Oh, yeah, meth heads and junkies and, people with deep mental. I guess his constituency are people with deep mental issues. What's wrong? Like, who are you offending? You just go... Look, it's a lot of drugs.
Well, they
and it's a lot of mental problems.
Independent,
and we need to clean it up. Why are you painting a picture of homelessness that literally doesn't exist?
Rosie.
And then why would? Okay, so when he said that, we had a homeless problem, and now we have a tenfold homeless problem because he said homeless was his thing. Listen, everybody. His two biggest things are homelessness problems and the bullet train. Let's give a grade score on how he's doing over the last decade on homeless problem and the bullet train. Is there such a thing as an F minus or is it just an F?
Participation. He showed up to work.
FUU? Like what? Look, if you were super generous, if you're the biggest fan of Gavin Newsom ever, and you were like, I'm going to give him a score, I'm going to take the homeless problem, and I'm going to take the bullet train. And by the way, those are his passion projects. That's what he's passionate about. It's come out of his own mouth 1,000 times. I would be super generous and go, I'll give him an F on the homeless and a D minus on the bullet train just because I'm in a good mood or something. I mean, it's a fucking failure. He's a failure.
Keeps getting elected, though. Huh?
We have a great montage. From starting in 08, we have a great montage of Gavin Newsom and his train.
You can get down to L.A. in 2.5 hours, $55. In California, we're still debating high-speed rail. What a joke. Well, finally, California is going to get it right with this new high-speed rail. I personally have been supportive of the high-speed rail project since my time as mayor of the city and county of San Francisco. The project is no longer a $33 billion project.
18.
The project's years and years behind. The project's wildly over budget. That doesn't mean it's a bad idea. You can get phase one done, which in essence is from Bakersfield to Silicon Valley. We do have the capacity to complete a high-speed rail link between Merced and Bakersfield. Now, I know some critics are going to say, well, that's a train to nowhere. We have a real federal partner.
21.
With our high-speed rail system, an incredible opportunity to finish the work. High-speed rail was mentioned. $4.2 billion is being requested of the legislature to finish the job. Someone who's all in on the high-speed rail, the high-speed rail, not as a rail project, but an economic development project. $3.6 billion. It's about damn time we have a high-speed rail system.
I can't even get to Merced.
It's kind of fun. It'll be fun when someone is able to put this montage together 30 years from now, and there's just a guy who looks like Gandalf on there with like a long gray beard and a cane, like a staff, and wearing a robe. You shall
not board.
Talking about high-speed rail, because we'll have the technology to go from young, vibrant Gavin Newsom to old, decrepit Gavin Newsom talking about high-speed rail.
Gonna have a Gavin Newsom clone.
My kids are I'm gonna tell them both. Look, when you guys are about 45 or 50, you're gonna have the greatest montage ever. It's gonna be a man's life span
a
talking
jar
about
in a head
rail,
talking about high-speed rail.
Jesus fuck!
I'm in a head and
Christ.
That's 17 years, almost 18 years.
It's been going on, man. I'm just trying to get up to the party in San Francisco.
Do things. It's not functional or capable. I don't know what people want.
The thing that gets me is all the people in California who absolutely adore this man. He can do no wrong.
He
got a lot of ribs, I got to tell you.
My mom told me before she died, I'm voting for Gavin Newsom. I'm like, okay, I guess you don't pay taxes or do anything. I don't know.
During the lockdowns, one of my friends called me up and said, "Well, I'm really glad we got Gavin Newsom as our governor because he's going to save us." You're a fucking idiot.
You know the fucking problem? The thing that's funny about all this? I love any clip from like 2020, 2021, 2022, especially any Democratic clip where the person is on the mic bloviating and everyone behind him is wearing a mask, but the one person with their mouth open that's yelling about stuff does not have a mask on, and everyone just went, yeah, that's how we're going to do this. And so it's like, I will sit silently with my mask on in the back, and then when it's my turn to bloviate, I'll pull the mask off and start spreading disease. Okay.
The latest thing I saw in some kind of Twitter thread was that people are not wearing masks because they're afraid to stand out from the public and make a stand for safety. Whereas before, when we did stand up and make a stand for FU totalitarianism, we were ridiculed for not doing the same thing as everyone else.
All right, let's do one more story in here.
All right, man. It's a revolution right now. The Minecraft-obsessed teen boys are destroying movie theaters.
What is going on with this movie?
Man, the game is supposed to be building things up, but the teens just wrecking stuff. It's a viral meme that everybody's in on. When the chicken jockey comes out, which is like a rare Easter egg character in the video game, the kids go ballistic. Throw popcorn everywhere, soda. Check it out. What a fun time, man. God, I wish I was 12. I would go buck-ass wild.
I gotta tell you, when I was young... Okay, a couple things.
They're comparing it to a Rocky Horror Picture Show, like kind of a vibe for Gen Z where they're just going wild for this thing. I'm into it. It's infectious.
Yeah, it's fun. I haven't seen the movie.
I would hate if I worked at AMC.
Okay, the throwing of the popcorn, I would never engage in such folly because that thing is like $11.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm eating that whole thing. And by the way, I'm eating shit off the ground.
These are suburban kids. They got disposable income.
One of my roommates used to like when a girl would break up with him, he'd give him a pie in the face, you know, and
wasteful. Yeah,
I would come and he would give, and it wasn't shaving cream; it was like Dupars or 4 and 20 pies, and then I would come home. And I'd open the fridge. I see a fucking pie from 4 and 20 pie in a box. And I'd go, Donnie, where we get this pie? Let's eat this pie. He'd go, no, I got hit Melanie Redmond in the face with it. I go, but why don't we eat it? I go, no, she broke up with me. I got to hit her with the pie. I go, when are you going to hit her with the pie? You go, well, she's coming over at like 8. I go, where are you going to do this? I mean, he said, well, I have to hide the pie on the bumper of your truck. I have to keep it out there because word has gotten out that I hit people with the pie, so they don't want to come up to the door. You know, I said, well, take a walk, then I'll get it off the bumper. I went out. When he did it to Danielle Chaikin in her driveway,
you licked her face.
I went out and ate the fucking pie off the driveway. I picked up the pie from her driveway.
Yeah.
And brought it back into her house and ate it. I mean, it had gravel in it. Because that's how into pie.
I always imagine you barefoot with like overalls on, all disheveled, with your hair every which way, just like country bumpkin.
Fishing through a dumpster.
Exactly.
I took the pie home from my pie eating contest at North Hollywood High. I took the pie off of Daniel Chaikin's driveway. I took another pie off of Otsego Street.
Pie's a real through line in your life, Carolla.
Pies were expensive for me, and they were delectable.
I'm going to cheat on my diet. I think I'm having a pie today.
I was like, cake, give me a break, but pie. I fucking love me some pie. So I would never take a tub of popcorn and just launch it into the air.
But you can understand, right, the vibe. I think a lot of people are saying, oh, they're a real stuffy pearl clutching, but I'm admiring it. I wish I was in on it.
I like it. It's the straight man's Rocky Horror Picture Show is basically what this has turned into. And they even bring chickens into the theater.
Yeah, they're getting weird with it. The meme expands, you know. Anytime you meme, you can't just stay on the same level of meme. It's got to go up and up and up until you got a chicken involved.
Is this movie, what's it on Rotten Tomatoes? Is it
45%?
Oh, that's it?
Yeah, that's it. Like, it's being panned by the critics. They're saying it's garbage, but I mean, it's an IP that has been popular for 10 years. Kids have grown up with it. Like, it was like their first iPad game, and now they're like 11, 12, 15 years old.
I'm the worst dad ever, because whenever my son would start getting into this shit.
Yeah. Oh, 47 to change.
88 with the people. Whenever my son would start getting into this shit, I'm such a bad dad. Like he got into Pokemon. Okay.
He just slapped the cards out of his hand?
You're going to regret this decision one day, this Pokemon stuff. And he goes, I like Pokemon. I go, yeah, you like it now, but you're going to look back and be embarrassed.
Why? Really?
Because it's nonsense. I know. You want to build a soapbox racer or something like that? Like, I'm all in. A stupid Pokemon crap. Get the fuck out of here.
See?
So I told him, you're just not going to. And then when he was like 15, he wanted to do something else or something. And I was like, remember our Pokemon conversation? Yeah. Remember, now you're embarrassed? Yeah. I said, all right. Keep that in mind, because I'll tell you in advance.
But you act like you came out the womb swinging the hammer. You picked up interest as time went on and got rid of some, I'm sure.
I
ain't seen you boxing in a while.
I can only shadow box.
I hear you.
I was into Hot Wheels.
Oh, okay.
I got into
Me
Hot
too.
Wheels.
I got
into Hot Wheels. Never got into the Matchbox for some reason. I was into Hot Wheels.
So that's Pokemon, though. That's in the same, you collect them all.
I traded them, some Hot Wheels, to a kid for, what were those cards, Dawson? Garbage Pail?
Oh, those are badass.
Kids, yeah.
Wait, but what were the ones that had like fake brands, like Comet, but it was called Vomit, and it was like whatever that was? Was that Garbage Pail?
Yeah, it was Garbage Pail
was.
Kids. Yeah, they had like all different styles of art. There was like a different.
They were like the Weird Al of trading cards. They were like someone else came up with the product, and you went from my Sharona to my Bologna or something. But the cards were like products, and I made a bad deal. I was thinking about this the other day.
Yeah.
I realized I was like, I had Hot Wheels, and I traded this kid like a Hot Wheel for a card.
Oh,
the fucking card was worth a penny. And the Hot Wheels were like $2. And I just said, like, here's 2 Hot Wheels. All right, here's 2 cards. Stupid. It was like you trading your car for a moped.
You're right, yeah.
All right. We got to take a quick break. Sahil Bloom is going to come in here and motivate all you people. He's got a very interesting book, and we'll talk to him right after this. Well, what is a mechanic, an auto shop owner in Georgia, a taco restaurant operator in Arizona, and a life-saving medical innovator in Tennessee have in common? Well, they're all small businesses, and they're all thriving on TikTok. She Mechanic, Arizona Taco King, and CPR Rap are all just 3 of the 7.5 million businesses across the U.S. using TikTok to compete and grow. From family-run establishments to entrepreneurs, 74% of businesses on TikTok say the platform has allowed them to scale their operations, increase sales, and expand to new locations. And that growth means jobs. Today, millions of businesses on TikTok employ more than 28 million people and counting, all paying taxes and adding. Small businesses thrive on TikTok. Right, Dawson?
Learn more about TikTok's contribution to the U.S. economy at tiktokeconomicimpact.com. It's time to check Adam's voicemail.
Hey, Adam. It's Joe in Jacksonville, Florida. Love the show. Something crazy I thought of. Did you know Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, is 59 years old? Total smoke show. But her counterpart in the Clinton administration, Janet Reno, was 55 when she was Attorney General. I mean, if you compare those 2 photos of Janet Reno and Pam Bondi next to each other, and Pam Bondi is 5 years older, it's mind-blowing. But just thought I'd bring that up. Thanks.
You can leave us a message at 888-634-1744.
Yeah, you sound like my young girlfriend. You seen Pam Bondi and Janet Reno? I'm like, all right. Enough already. Yeah, well. Sahil Bloom is in the studio. He's got a book out, 5 Types of Wealth, a transformative guide to design your dream life. New York Times bestseller. Ooh, congratulations on that. Let's talk about it. What are the 5 types of wealth?
5 types of wealth. Time wealth, all about freedom to choose how you spend your time, who you spend it with, where you spend it when you trade it for other things. Social wealth is about relationships, the few close, deep bonds, and then your broader connections to things, circles that extend beyond the self. Mental wealth is all about purpose and growth. Physical wealth is about health and vitality. And then financial wealth is the one that we all know, money.
Mm-hmm. Are people putting too much stock in different aspects of those 5 things, maybe spending too much time on the wealth part, the financial wealth, and not enough time on the social part? Or if you've seen, is there an imbalance in the universe?
Yeah, I think that the way that we measure our entire life's worth has historically been just around money. And there's this management theorist named Peter Drucker who said, what gets measured gets managed. That's the idea that the thing that you measure ends up being the thing that you narrowly hone in on and focus around. You optimize everything around that one thing. And for a lot of people, we are so narrowly focused on the one thing of making money, accumulating status and things, that we lose sight of the much bigger picture war of building a good life around all of these other areas of wealth.
Yeah. So what are some simple sort of basic things that people could start on? It might be outlined in the book.
I think that the most important thing when it comes to any of these types of wealth, first is awareness. You need to develop an awareness that there are other types of wealth that extend beyond money. And then there's action on top of that awareness. So time wealth is really where a lot of this starts. It's the first major section in the book for a reason, because if you don't have an awareness that time is fundamentally your most precious asset, the one thing that you can't get back, you can never take action against that idea. That, frankly, for me, was the spark that changed everything in my own life. It was this recognition that I was marching down a path towards what I would call the Pyrrhic victory, this idea of winning the battle but losing the war. And I think that's the path that a lot of people are walking down. And frankly, you don't have to look that far in society to find examples of that. We all know examples of people who have made hundreds of millions, maybe billions of dollars, who we celebrate. We pat them on the back. We tell those people that they won the game. And we ignore the fact that they have 3 ex-wives and 4 kids that don't talk to them. Mm-hmm. And you have to ask yourself in your own life, is that actually a game that I care to win?
Time is interesting, which is I'm guilty of wasting time, but I'm also aware of it, and that I cannot stand like sort of inefficiencies in it. Even, when I'm driving, no one in LA knows you can turn right on a red. So I just sit there and the person's not turning, and I'm like, what are we doing here? And then they go, and then I honk, or oftentimes reach over if I'm the passenger and honk the person who's driving the car's horn, which they don't like at all. And then the person gets mad at me and they go, what are you doing? I go, they're not going. We should be going. And they go, well, what are you in such a rush for? And I go, I'm not really in a rush. It's just, why aren't we moving? We're not, people end up saying the same thing like 15 times in a weird loop. They go, look, you got to show up at 8 tomorrow. And I go, okay. And they go, because Dan's going to be, and I go, we're good. You just said show up at 8, and I just said, okay. So we don't have to keep going down this road. But I don't like all the waste in, the government waste drives me nuts. The sort of the physical waste drives me nuts. So I hate the time waste part of life. And society is stacked against you in that department. Like you want to pull a permit to do something, it's gonna be a while. It's like, why? I want to get going. I want to get started.
Yeah, especially when it comes to the things that really matter to you. It's like getting stuck in traffic. These things happen, right? There's natural sort of like frictions of life that at some point we need to realize too. The counterpoint to that is, we have, as a society, been obsessed with reducing friction from our lives. Technology effectively has been about slowly reducing the amount of friction that you have to experience in your daily life. You used to have to go to the grocery store to get food. Now you can just order it on Instacart. You used to have to, walk up the stairs. Now you can just take an elevator. Over and over and over again, we've developed technology that has reduced friction. But at some point along the way, you realize that a lot of the meaning of life was found in the friction. And when you obsessively reduce friction from everything that you can do, take dating as an example. You're like young people now dating. You no longer have to risk going up to a girl at a bar and getting rejected.
Right.
You can just go on your app and you can opt in or opt out. And at some point, you wonder, what is the cost of all of those things? Because there's no such thing as a free lunch, right, in life.
Right.
And so we also have to recognize that sometimes the time wasted maybe was not really waste. There was some sort of meaning in it.
Yes.
Going back to your point, though, I would just say that the ancient Greeks had the best version of this that I can imagine, which is they had two different words for time. They had chronos, which was the idea of chronological, linear, quantitative time. All time is created equal. Then they had kairos, which was the idea that not all time is created equal, that there are certain moments or certain windows that actually have higher importance. They have more texture. So energy invested into those specific moments is worth more. It creates the right outcomes that you're trying to achieve. That is, I think, how we unlock real-time wealth in our lives. It is to say, you need to identify those specific moments, those energy creating moments that you have with certain people or on certain opportunities, and deploy your units of energy into those.
Yeah, no, I've always said a kind of a version of that, which is your life comes down to sort of little moments, and you'll either pass or fail. And I was aware of it, and I used to tell people when I started in comedy, and I got onto the radio out here in Los Angeles on K-Rock Radio, and it was years ago, but I said to everyone, these bits that I'm doing on this morning show for free have to be really good. The first 10 have to be really good. The 11th one could be a C-, and I'll be fine. But if the first, second, or third one kind of suck, I'm out. And so I paid a lot of attention and put a lot of time into those bits. Later on, it was like, yeah, I wanted the bits to be good, but I wasn't going to get fired or not asked back if that, your first date better be good, second date better be good, 28th date can be a stinker. You can have a bad night. You're fine. There'll be another date. That person's not going to break up with you is what I'm saying. But if the first one is bad, put some time into the first one.
Same thing applies to hedge fund managers, by the way. Like when you look at the world of finance, there's this old story of the best way to become a billionaire in the world of investing is to get really lucky like 5 times in a row to start. It doesn't matter if you get lucky, at times 15 through 20 because no one has given you a bunch of money to manage. If you get lucky 5 times in a row, you can go take $1 billion and have 2% fees on that, and you'll be rich no matter what. You'll be totally fine. And then you can be really bad at it and you can explain it and create a narrative around it, whatever. But getting lucky times 0 through 5 is much better than getting lucky times, 10 through 15.
Yeah, I think people, first date or an audition or a first week on the job or whatever it is, make sure you put a lot of energy into that, and you put forth something that's attractive. And it doesn't have to be a sexual attraction on a date. I mean, an attractive as an employee, attractive as a whatever. If if you own a coffee shop, that first cup of coffee the person gets is going to decide whether that person comes back or not. The 30th cup of coffee might have an off day, and they'll still be back.
Yeah,
usually.
Another way of saying it is it's much harder to change someone's impression of you than it is to create the impression in the first place. It takes much more energy to change someone's impression.
Well, it's the only time we're going to have a blank canvas. After that, there's going to be all kinds of paint on it, and it may be a good painting or a negative painting, but you only get one shot at a first impression, as I think some commercial used to say. But it's true, and I feel like people don't think enough about that.
That's life too, right?
It's all facets.
It's a metaphor for life. I mean, it's the thing that you've done over long periods of time becomes very, very difficult to change. It's the reason why there's that old There's that old Chinese proverb, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
Oh, that's a good one.
You know, yes, it is the best time to have made any of these changes in your life, do any of these things was 20 years ago. But the reality is no matter how far gone you are, no matter how many bad decisions you've made up to this point, the only thing that you can actually control, you know, if you have a stoic mindset around it, is the action in the present today.
Well, you were talking moments ago about friction. And I've always just called it gravity. And I sound like you, or maybe you sound like me because I'm older. But I've said, be careful, people, removing everything, all the gravity, the friction. Stop having everyone show up and do everything for you. And then I would constantly argue with people because I had money. And so people would go, you don't have to have these conversations like constantly. And I would go, I know, but it's good to do these things. It's good to be a part of that. And society fought it. Like they were like loud, and women would do it a lot. They'd go, why can't you have a nanny when the kids are 15? You know, you don't need a nanny. You don't have to have a nanny. You can do your own stuff. And they'd go like, yeah, but you have enough money. Everything was like, yeah, but you have enough money kind of thing. And I always knew it, and I fought about it a lot. And I was not successful in my battles. But I do tell people all the time, they'll go like, we should have the detailer guy come wash the car. I go, just go wash the car. You have a hose, you have a driveway, just go wash it. Why should she wash the car? Why are you wasting your time washing your car? I'm like, I can't explain to you why it's not a waste of time, because you're right. Technically, if I average $2,000 an hour, paying a guy $69 to come over and clean my car would be a better use of funds than me spending 2 hours out in the driveway. But I'm telling you, it's important.
Yeah, life isn't on an Excel spreadsheet.
Yes.
Your whole life can't come down to an Excel spreadsheet. And if it does, frankly, I would argue the people whose entire life is on an Excel spreadsheet end up pretty miserable. You optimize the life out of your life. It has become this trendy thing, right, for people to say like, oh, what's my hourly rate? And then this, I should do this and that. It's like, sometimes you just need to not lose sight of the thing that got you there in the first place too. The actions that you took to get you to the position that you're currently in, sometimes there's a reason that those got you to that place. And you can't lose sight. It's like never get too big to do the small in certain areas, in certain ways.
Yeah, there's a real almost majesty, or like a majestic quality to just doing simple, basic tasks and making your kid breakfast. It's just a good, simple thing that everyone should engage in, regardless of what your 401k says.
I mean, that's the different types of wealth, right? Like the relationship texture that a simple breakfast creates. That's never going to be something where when you're 80, you look back and you're like, oh, that one breakfast. But the compounded effect of all of those breakfasts that you were still willing to make, instead of hiring the personal chef that you could have paid for and having the nanny do it, or having the night nurse take care of them all night, even though you could have done all of those things, the compounded effect of that may be significant in terms of the actual relationship that gets built. And in my own version of what a wealthy life looks like, having adult children that still want to spend time with me is at the top of that list.
I think it is a pretty good yardstick to measure an individual, male or female, adult. I said very clearly when I got back from doing Celebrity Apprentice in New York, when people are like, what's Trump like? I said, well, I had some issues with certain aspects of Trump, and I wasn't a big fan, and he's very different than I am, but his adult children like him and respect him, and that means he's doing something right. I know many adult people, such as my mom, hated her mom like her whole life, and it was always a problem, and they took it to the grave, and it's like, somebody did something wrong if your adult children do not speak to you or like you, and or you did something right when you have respect and love. They wanted to work with him. They wanted to be around him. They were good themselves. And I was like, look, I may have a beef with aspects of this guy, but he did get that right. And that is something to measure somebody by.
I think it's a good razor. It cuts through the noise on a lot of things in life. You just you have to have done a lot of things over a long period of time to have kids that still want to hang out with you. I think about it with my own father, by the way, because he got disowned when he wanted to marry my mom. My dad comes from a white Jewish family in the Bronx, New York. Wanted to marry my mom, who was Indian. His dad said no. Said you have to choose. And my dad walked out the door, never saw his family again. To this day, never met my dad's parents. He has 3 siblings I never met. He made a clear decision. And on the back of that decision, decided to reject, I think, all of the ways that he felt that he was treated or raised by his father and amplify the other side of it, of being the supportive, present, energetic father that I felt I had growing up.
So never met the grandparents?
Never met the grandparents.
And uncles, aunts.
No, he's got his father passed away many years ago, but as far as I know, his mother's still alive. It's a crazy thing to think about in this day and age that we live in now. But this, with family in particular, at some point in time, there's too much water under the bridge, and it just becomes challenging to remedy something.
My friend used to say too much sewage under the bridge, which is more.
It might as well be. It's probably more applicable.
Water has a happier connotation than it's sewage. You need water. It's like the river from Tijuana to San Diego under the bridge. But I marvel at, and I was saying it this morning, not even knowing we were getting into this, but I was looking at Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni and their problems and their attorneys, and I'm like, what percentage of your life is just attorneys and this and squabbles, and like how necessary is any of this stuff? It is insane how sort of fast and loose people play with their time. And your dad's situation with his family, it's insane. I don't know. I am shocked and appalled when I want to write a book called I Never Knew Adults Would Be This Stupid. Like I am appalled that so many adults are so goddamn bad, and they're not even bad people. It weirdly, like you go, well, that guy's not a bad, your dad's not evil. He's probably never killed anyone or ran over somebody in his car or anything, but yet this is his behavior. And also, why is it okay with him? Like if my son was like, I'll just never talk to you ever again, I'd be like really miserable about that.
Yeah, I feel like no one wakes up in the morning and wants to fuck up their life. Excuse my language. No one sets out to like ruin their relationship on a given day, or get into trouble, or like go down a bad path, whatever those things are. It's this tiny, slow set of actions that kind of like boils over time. It's like the metaphor of the boiling frog. Frog jumps into boiling water, it'll immediately jump out. But if you put a frog into lukewarm water and bring it to a boil, it'll stay in there until it dies. It's like those tiny things over long periods of time we don't notice as humans. And no one thinks they're the bad guy, right? Like humans are great at telling ourselves stories that we are the good guy in a situation. And so I'm sure his father had a very different version of events that he told his family and that he understood.
No, I get it. And the game I just played with Dolph Lundgren was, what would your dad say? How would he describe? You describe your dad as a guy who was violent, beat on you and beat on your mom, and then sent you away to your grandparents' house near the Arctic Circle. Fine. What would he say? Because I have found it to be effective, like where people go, you will scratch, you'll get to the truth a little bit. They'll go, I did a lot of drugs and I did punch him once, and so he would probably say something like, and you kind of get you back to there. Yeah, no one ever goes, because I'm evil and I'm unfair, and so that's what I do. It's also a big problem that people everyone thinks they're good, especially also a lot of people that cause a lot of harm think they're good. Just scares me a little bit, especially when they're in charge. But what would your dad's dad say?
Without having enough details of the exact situation, it's hard for me to opine on. But I would guess he would say, like, he's my my golden child, oldest son, and he's sort of rejecting his family to go with this girl that he doesn't even know that well, and disloyalty, and
and he wanted to marry
that way.
Someone of the Jewish faith.
No, my dad came from a Jewish. They weren't even religious, so it wasn't a religious thing.
That's a weird. Oh, I figured
he wanted to marry my Indian mother. If I were to actually think about it, my guess is it was much more about a power thing. That like your oldest son, who was kind of like your golden child, is for the first time questioning your judgment and your wishes for his life. My dad had very much like followed a path that was handed to him. And this was the first time that he was sort of questioning the path that was handed to him to do something different. And his dad said no. And rather than just saying, okay, father, and, consenting to the new wishes, he continued to say no. And I think that, that leads to like this chip away. I think pride and ego gets in the way, probably on both sides. And I think my dad would admit that. All humans, and men especially, become ego-driven in these situations.
Did your dad continue on the other paths that were carved out for him, or
he did.
Directions he was pointing?
Yeah,
he wanted him to be a lawyer or a doctor or something.
He stuck. He was on a track to be an academic, to be a professor, and he has been a professor his entire life. A very successful one in that vein. But this was sort of his one path that he carved off of.
So your dad's family chose paths. A lot of families do that. My family didn't do any of that, so I just sort of did what I wanted. It was fine. I would tell all the time I could have returned home with a morbidly obese black lesbian and said, "This is who I'm marrying," and my whole family would have went, "Yeah, okay." Well, we don't care one way or the other. So I never felt any of that gravity. But your dad adhered to most of the plan, except for your Indian mom.
Yeah.
And so it would seem like, you did
90%.
They got 5 out of 7 with your dad or whatever it is.
You take the win.
I would take the win. The kid could have been an interpretive dance guy, turned bi and lived in the village or something, and he went down that
Dyed
road.
His hair purple, and just gone down the totally different path. No, he's a clean cut professor. From the outside looking in, it seems like he actually. You're right. It's like 80-90%. You gotta take good when you can get it.
The surprising part of it to me is the mom. Because the mom normally would have a talking to with the dad and say, "Look, I'm not going to."
I think his father was a pretty domineering presence in their household. There's a bit of a generational difference too versus today, and I think his father was not a particularly kind man, at least.
So she was scared of him.
I think there was an element of that, and I would guess that today she's still alive. That if we were to approach her wanting to remedy things, that we would be able to in some way. But I think that decision has to come from my dad and mom, not from us. And so it hasn't happened.
Sorry for the silence, but I just think about the waste. It kind of falls under the waste department for me, that so many people, and I mean, on a very visceral level, there's like, there's that 17-year-old kid and he got stabbed in the heart, because he told some other kid to move off his bleachers or something. And it's like, wow, what a waste of that person's life and of the other person's life too, who's going to be in prison for the rest of their life. So there's like that version of it. And then there's the more cerebral version of it, which is like your family. But it all falls under the same heading for me. I just go, ugh, what the fuck are we doing here, people? Why are we doing this? I'm like kind of appalled that there's that level of it, and even when people are educated and financially good and well dressed and sane and everything else, there's still a lot of it.
Yeah, it goes back to your book title. I like your book idea. I think that's smart.
Well, you want to ghostwrite it? I'm pretty busy. But I do. I once a week, I just go, I had no idea adults would be this stupid. I had in every realm that I have a contact with them in, and people I talk to, and like I said, educated, bright, they're not third world people. They're like people with college degrees and stuff. And I'm saddened by it. But on the other hand, I suppose they think there's something wrong with me, except for I'm always right. That's the problem. The problem is I'm always right. So I don't know what I keep score. I have a track record. So I don't, but I'm sure they would say the exact same thing about me.
Yeah, the empowering part in this is that you can generate incredible upside in life by just being consistently not stupid. That was like the Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger old adage of how they had been so successful in building, their investing track record. And it was like, we don't try to be brilliant. We just try to avoid being stupid. And it turns out that most people are really bad at avoiding being stupid.
And there's also, you really just have to kind of be consistent, and you have to have a little bit of a work ethic, and you'll be pretty good in this society. You don't have to be Michael Jordan. You can just 100%. Be sort of a hard-working guy who
Tony Kukoc over and over
Tony
again.
Kukoc. Yeah, you just show up. You can be Kurt Rambis. People have to kind of like you to be around, and just show up and hustle a little bit, and you'll land on your feet. Like it's a weird.
Yeah,
I hear politicians going, these people, they struggle and they struggle and they struggle and they can't get ahead. And it's like, yeah, you can, but you have to not be stupid, and you have to kind of learn as you go and not make the same mistakes and do all that stuff, and it'll work. It'll work for you.
Yeah, you need to have agency. You need to believe that you are capable of taking an action and creating an outcome in any area of your life. And when you believe that, there's a lot of good that can come.
I completely agree. And when I hear politicians peddling the you can't get ahead because of the color of your skin or because of your background or because of whatever it is, I go, you're taking the agency away, and that's going to be a big problem. And I don't know if they know what they're doing when they do that and all the destruction they're causing, or they're just trying to get votes, or they don't care, or they think they're just helping in some way. But the agency part's a big issue, and it didn't used to be politicians explaining to everyone why they couldn't get anywhere. They were going, I'm going to just level the playing field, and you can all, the rising tide is going to lift all these boats. They don't really do that so much anymore, and it's destructive, and it bothers me. And we need to get back to agency. Like people don't need to be told. See, their version of agency is tell every kid they're the best. I'm like, no, that's not the message. The message is you could be the best or not. You'll figure that one out.
You get one moment with your kid. I'm convinced. You get one moment with your kid to teach them that lesson. I so clearly remember that one moment in my own life. I had played baseball my whole life. I ended up getting a scholarship, playing at Stanford, had a great baseball career. But as a 12-year-old, I had been the baseball player on every team I had played on. And then I tried out for this all-star team. And there were 16 players taken. I was the 17th. I got cut. And I was devastated. First time I had really failed at the sport, crying, very upset. My dad came into my room, sat down on my bed, and he said, I understand you're upset. Here are the things that they said you could work on. Let's go out this summer and we're going to work on those things. And I look back on that as being such a formative moment because the two options that he had, one was to come in and say, they're idiots. You were the best player there. They're so dumb. They made a big mistake. You were the best, son. Or he could do what he did, which was to hand me my agency on a plate and say, you are capable of going and taking action. I will support you to take those actions. Let's go work on this stuff together to go and create the desired outcome to improve at these skills. And the path that sets you on, you can spot from a mile away the kids that were told, no, you're just the best, sweetheart. You're the best. That was a mistake. You're an idiot. That's the person who you give them feedback at their first job to say, hey, this wasn't good enough. And they break down, or they say that you were too critical of them and they're not coachable, right?
Yeah.
Versus the person who says like, okay, I'm going to take that feedback and that's going to be a rallying cry for me to go and be the best version.
Yeah, the feedback thing, it's really weird. There's a lot of younger people, and when I say younger, they're probably in their early 40s now. They're not that young, but I've seen it and I've dealt with it, which is they obfuscate, they externalize everything. Every single thing you tell them, they go, that's because nothing, no internalization at all. And the other thing, everything is earth-shattering to them in the critique department, and they thus never improve because everything is outside of them. And it's almost like you played baseball. There used to be a thing called Pete Rose or something, like the pitchback or something. It's just like a net with a spring-loaded thing.
I had one of those.
And you'd set it up 20 feet from you and you'd play catch with yourself and you'd throw it at and it'd bounce. These people, and there's a lot of them, and they're not even bad people, just younger dudes. And you just go, hey, man, you're late or whatever, and the ball comes flying right back at you. And you go, hey, man, I told you to work on the parking lot and clean, and the ball just comes sailing right. Like, you can't even, they'll even go, I never said that. I didn't say that. You said that. You didn't say that. And it's like, okay, well, you're not improving because the ball sails back at me a millisecond after I throw it at the pitchback. It literally, that's what they do. Did Johnny bench? See if we can figure that out. All right, it's getting too late. The point is take it and go, all right, you can go, I was late because of whatever, and then you go, it's not going to happen again.
Agency.
I get it, people. By the way, I'm old and I'm rich, so I'm fine. I'm doing this this is more for you than it is. It's not for me. I'm okay. I have the misfortune of hiring you, but this is not for me. It's really more for you. What was this thing called? The pitchback? Yeah.
I had one of these.
You had one. It was called the pitchback.
Yeah, this is good. That's a real retro one that you got up on the screen.
Yeah, the old ones were like old school orange. It's probably one of the only gifts I ever got.
I broke so many damn windows with that thing, just missing it.
Oh, really?
Like putting it in front of a window and just smoke. Oh, man.
Yeah.
My son broke his first window the other day, and that was a big moment. That felt like a rite of passage.
Well, it was at a Tesla dealership. He was pretty out of control. But
it was one of the Cybertrucks, like they threw the metal ball at it and it still cracked the window, even though Elon said it wouldn't happen.
Was that Hank Aaron's pitchback? Is that who that is? I mean, it's somebody autographed that thing.
That looks like Hank Aaron.
I'm going Hank Aaron. Now it's black paint 20 feet away, so I'm going to say Hank.
By the way, those things were like an absolute health hazard. Those the little bands with the hooks on them.
Yeah.
Like one of those snapped off and take an eye out.
Yeah. And one of the only gifts I ever got as a kid, and I think my dad was like, we got to get him a pitchback. And then my mom would have been like, well, that cost $11, so we're not going to do that. And then my dad would be like, he can stand in the yard alone all day and leave us alone. And my mom was like, okay, good plan.
That was basically the nanny.
Yeah, the pitchback. Yeah, but that's what you get with young dudes when you go, hey, man, I want to talk about your performance. They go, pow, ball just comes sailing right at your head. Whatever you pitch to them, right back. Let me give the book a plug. I know you're traveling today, I'm assuming. I saw your suitcase out there. 5 Types of Wealth, a transformative guide to design your dream life. Get with it, people. Good to see you, man.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you, and I'm going to read this book now. I Well, go to adamcarolla.com for all the live shows. I'm going to be all over the place. And Dolph Lundgren, grab some of his vodka, hard cut vodka, and get Sahil's book as well. Until next time, it's Adam Carolla for Sahil Bloom and Dolph Lundgren saying, Mahala.